So on day 9, we will understand what are the different kinds of validation Pega provides us in order to implement in our application. Second, we'll try to categorize all kind of validation in server side and client side. I hope you are already aware of these two terms because these are quite generic. Server side validation and client side validation. Then we are going to talk about the validation rule, added validate rule, constraints rule, and the property type rule. It's a very small topic, I would say. So we are going to do a practical for all of these. Okay, so if you see overall in programming, basically, if I divide the validation, it will be divided into two types only. First is the client side validation, second one is the server side validation. Now, client side validation basically means it will provide an instant feedback to the user, whereas server side validation ensures data is validated correctly with respect to the business logic. For example, if you go to any website, let's say even Google, right, or Gmail, it asks for two mandatory fields, that is ID and password. If you try to submit the screen without entering any of the detail, it will throw error on the screen itself, right? Without any business process, because we have a validation that email ID and password cannot be null. It cannot be blank. So if you try to submit, it will throw error with a message. Similarly, we have server-side validation. Server-side validation can differ as per the business logic. It might be, for example, if age is less than 18, then customer should not be allowed to proceed. It is a kind of a server-side validation. If age is greater than 20, something like that, then approval is not required. That is also validation. So all these things, validate rules are categorized in the client side and server side. Okay. You're good with this definition?
Just to clarify,
Yeah.
is how is that determined? So in terms of calling it server or client side, is it that so can server side validation be done say on the client side on say JavaScript?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so
If
all
you
right.
see, there are a couple of scenarios in which client side validation and server side validation both can be done at the same time or by a same rule. For example, if you see this edit validate, right? This rule can be used as a client side and a server side. If I come down, even you can note it down here. You see, server side validation, Pega provides edit validate rule. Even for client side, we provide edit validate rule. That means both can be used both the places. So this is one
Oh,
flexibility here. Now, sometimes we feel like what to go with. Shall we go with server side? Shall we go with client side? So at that moment, what we usually suggest is for the instant feedbacks, we go with the client side. And if there is anything which required more complex logic or detailed business process, then we usually go with server side. And in server side, anyway, at the end, we can write custom JavaScripts, which anyway Pega don't recommend because most of the time Pega provide OTP rule for that covers most of the basic validations. Okay,
okay.
cool. So now we are completely talking about the Pega now because this client side server side is like of a generic term, right? So in server side, Pega have these four rules: validation rule, edit validate rule, constraints rule, and property table type validation. Now, in client side, we have required condition, property, data type, and control, edit validate rule, again same, and custom JavaScript validation. This I've never seen people to use because they're done with these things only. It's just an option. In case of extremely complex requirement, which can't be achieved through the OOTP function, then they are going with the custom JavaScript. Okay. So these three are the most common, I would say, and even you will use in future if you work on any Pega project. So these are the most common validate rules. So first is the validation rule. So it is a primary validation rule in Pega. Second is from where it will be called, from where it will be configured. So it is configured from the flow action and activity. So activity we are not covering as part of this course, or maybe we'll see if we have some time in the end because that is a complex topic. So if we have a good understanding on the basics part, then we will take a look on the activities. So activity and flow action, these are the two places from where we can call the validation tool. And it usually triggers on submit. Submit means, for example, if there is a field called name, if you enter anything, it will not throw any error directly on the screen until and unless you won't submit the screen. Okay. Next is edit validate. So edit validate is a kind of a Java code that do the validation and return the error messages. We can write Java statement like we have the try catch, we have if statement, then we can show the display the message if the condition is true. So a lot of edit validate rules are provided by the Pega. We will see how it will be developed. For example, validate email address. Email address cannot, if there is no at the rate, if domain name is not there, then it should throw an error. If phone number is greater than 9 digits, throw an error. If zip code is null, throw an error. If space is there in the zip code or the TIN number, throw an error. So all these things comes under the edit validate rule. Because these are client side, right? It will directly, you don't have to submit the screen to get the error. Then last, we have the required condition. Required is very simple to understand. In a form, either the field is mandatory or it is optional. So if it is mandatory, that means we have to enable the required condition. If it is optional, then we can ignore that condition. Third scenario might be it is a required, but with respect to a business process. For example, if I am filling the form, let's say the field might not be mandatory with respect to the user ID. But if someone else with a different user ID try to access the form, for them it will be mandatory. So we can control the required condition with the business process. That also we will see. So we are good. We can proceed now, or you have any question?
I think we're good.
Okay. Mostly.
And I like one of the distinctions you gave,
Mhm.
which is with server side, with client side, you don't have to submit,
Yes.
uh, basically, but with server side, you have to submit and send it to the server
Yes.
to get, yeah, all right. So that's a very
Yes.
good thing.
Cool. Okay. So basically, as part of this today's session, you have to remember the three things here. First is these three names: validation rule, edit validate rule, and the required condition, and from where we can configure it and call it. So as you can see, we can call it from the flow action. This I'll directly show you from exactly where we can do it, and this one also. So if you remember these three things, that means you are done with the validation in Pega. Now let's jump onto the dev. Let's go to insurance. Okay. So for example, we have to give some conditions on the personal details. Okay. So I'll go to this configure view. Again, we can implement same thing from different places. So I'm just showing you all kind of flexibility. So currently we are doing this through the views. So if you see next to the field, we have a tab called validation. Okay, I'll click on this one. So now you can see nothing is there, right? So let's add condition. it will show error, do not submit. For example, I'll select one field. So let's say which one? Email. Not equal to, I would say like this. It's a null. So what it will throw? Email cannot be null. Let's submit this one. So one more thing. So whenever we do anything on the UI, right? It's not like the actual coding that we're doing on the screen right now, but Pega is doing it for us. So by the time I will submit, Pega will create a validate rule for us in the backend. That also we will see. Okay, I think that I need to make it equal. Validation, this I'll make. When email is equal to null, then it will throw. Okay. Save and run. Where is it? Okay, email is already removed from here. So let's go to personal details again and add email. Submit. Save. Now I'll jump onto the Dev Studio. Okay, so if I try to fill everything, apart from this, let's see, will it throws an error? You see, it is throwing us an error. Email cannot be null, right? So suppose now you understood the requirement. You have a validate rule through which you can give any kind of expressions. N number of expressions you can give, and it can be reused. So for example, I'm using it for email. You can use it for first name, you can use it for phone number, you can use it for the date of birth, anything you can use it for. Email cannot be null. You can customize the message. Even Pega is highlighting the field that needs to be corrected. So if I go to that same rule, so it is a part of our process and validate. So this one is the one which Pega created just now in the backend. You see, what I created in the view is completely different from this rule, right? I created like I just gave a message and I gave the condition. But Pega
Yeah.
divided that particular thing in this format because this is our validate rule format where you have to give a property, the property that needs to be checked for that error, and a condition or an expression. If I click on this edit, you'll be able to rate it more. Now, if you see, select a function. So we are selecting a function of type rule when evaluates to true. So Pega created a when rule for us. So if I open this evaluate rule, it is opening the same thing, right? When email is equal to null. So how Pega smartly converted our small thing to so much complex part. Even message also. We created a message. Pega created a message rule itself. email cannot be null. So there was one when rule, there was one message rule that Pega created and combined to a validate rule. Now suppose I want to add one more rule here. Let's go to the case. Let's try to see what we can do. Let's add for the
So
phone number.
let's do date of birth.
Hmm?
Let's do age. So date of birth. Say if someone needs to be at least say 10 years old.
Okay. So let's say 10 years old, right? So we can
Yeah.
apply that on this one, age field. Okay. Because once I will enter date of birth, the age will be calculated. So if
Yeah.
the end user is less than 18, so we will throw an error, not eligible. Okay. So let's go to the same validate rule which Pega created now. This time I'll add it from this rule. So let's say we have to use age field. Why? Because we have to throw error on age. Now we have to add some condition. I'll click on add. So this is our empty form. If I click down key, so these are the out of the box functions which Pega provides. For example, if you want to check whether a date is in past or future, you can check here. This I'll show you with respect to date of birth. For example, this one. Because date of birth can't be in future.
Yeah.
So if we can use this thing, a date time is in future. I will select here the property, date of birth is in the future. Then message TOP can't be in. So one more edit. Now let's say we'll add one more each. Let's add one more condition. Now let's see which function will be best for us now. Date time, no. Assign expression evaluates to true. It will work for us. But let's see if we can use another function also. First number, second number. This makes more sense. So let's say first number is dot age, which we are doing is less than 18. Then it will show not eligible. So these three things I've added, and all these things are under the personal detail. So all these things will trigger the personal details. What happens now? Perhaps you, okay. And I told you that we have to configure validation rule in the flow action. So how can we access flow action? Go to the case type, then process, open process, then the connector. Let's say currently we are talking about the personal detail, so we have to open personal detail connector, then flow action. Inside flow action, we have a tab called validation. So Pega created this validate rule for us. If required, we can also create it from our side, but because we directly create it from the view, so Pega created this for us. Let's open this. So it's the same thing. So validate rule will be single for a particular flow. This is one thing. For example, whatever you see in the personal detail section, all these things can be covered under a single validate rule because they are part of a same cluster. Now we have added three things, right? So let's test it. Insurance. One I added for date of birth and one I added for age. So I'll make it future, but it should be greater than. Is it max 30 or I can select. So age is -9. Here also I need to enter something. So we got two errors now. Age not eligible. Date of birth can't be in future. Okay, so now I'll change the date to the past. I'll make it 23. I'm still not selecting 18 years. Now let's submit again. So one error is gone. The future one is gone. Now we are pending with age not eligible. So if I select, let's go to the end. Okay, the calendar is length is very small. I'll try to change from here. Submit. Yes, we are able to submit. And we move to the insurance details section. Makes sense, right? How this thing work on?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Cool. And it looks good also, like how it will work. We got errors and automatically used to go off. Okay. Let's do create another case. Let's see what other validate rule we can check here. Okay. I think this is enough for this particular part. But suppose if you want to create a new validate rule for insurance detail. Okay. This time I'm not using anything out of the box. I'm going to create it. So personal detail is the flow action. So this time we'll go for the insurance details. Insurance detail flow action I'll open. I'll go to the validation rule. I'll write like insurance details validate. Click on this icon. It's created. Okay, so we have the same form now. Now we have to see the second. Let's use insurance type as mandatory. So I'll select like dot insurance type. Here I'll add condition. Expression evaluates to true. So I can pass like dot insurance type dot equals to, or we can say equals to null. Here we can show message insurance type cannot be plan. I'll submit. I will save this thing. I will save this to action also. Let's try. I'll refresh this case once. Go. Now let's submit. If you see here one thing, I am submitting the screen to get this error, right? That means it's a server side errors. But I can use the same configuration for giving me the required directly into the screen without submitting anything. So let's see that part. Let's go to view once. I will delete these validate rules, otherwise it won't allow us to play with the cases. This one is fine. This one will close. Let's go to okay, should through here itself. Okay, so if you see, I go to view, I go to personal details. In personal detail, suppose I need to make the first name as required. So I'll make it as required from here. This is the first option from where we can make. And currently I'm talking about this part, client-side validation, required condition. So I made first name as required. I'll make last name also as required. Now I'll submit. Save it.
It's 9 o'clock.
Create new insurance. You see, 2 star mark icons are coming now. That means I'm using a required condition here. And this will also help user to end user that these are the mandatory field that we have to fill. So if I remove this thing and try to submit, see, even I'm not submitting, right? I'm just moving out of that particular field. It is throwing me error. If I fill something, again I go out, error is gone. If I remove, I'll click outside, error is there. So these are the client side validation. I'm not submitting anything. It will be auto triggered once I'll be away
So
from this thing.
is this using React on the back end or it's
Yes.
just vanilla JavaScript?
No, it's a JavaScript in the backend.
Okay.
Yes. So if I want to see, right, I'll show you. Where is the view? Okay. So when you select required here, right? So Pega configure a JavaScript on this field, JavaScript and sometimes Java codes also. Okay, that is out of the box. But if suppose you want to create something for yourself, right? So this is first place where you can configure the required. Next is we'll go to the section. Dev Studio, insurance detail, flow action, and section. This is the second place to configure your required conditions. So you have these things, insurance type, description. So I can click on insurance type. If you come down, you will see one field called required here. And right now it is set as never. You can either set it always. So always it will be mandatory for the end user to fill. If you want to conditionalize it, that it will be mandatory for certain types. For example, let's do this for here. So I'll select required condition expression when dot insurance type is equals to auto insurance. Then it will be required, else it is not mandatory. I will save. I need to delete this validation rule. One zero zero three. So if I select auto insurance, Maybe I need to put a refresh and I try to submit. It is submitting. I need to add a refresh. So refresh is required whenever you have to refresh the backend data so that it will reflect in your UI. Change. So we will do a refresh. Let's verify the values also once in clipboard. It will be in the PI work page. Insurance type. Okay, there is a space. Auto insurance. Let's submit this one. You see, I said auto insurance. We can see the star icon. So now it will be mandatory. Please correct flagged field before submitting the form. And even I click outside, even if I fill this, error is gone. If I remove it, error will be there. Let's select something else, health insurance. Now mandatory icon is gone. I can submit now. That means you can conditionalize also the required condition. But that can only be done from the Dev Studio because App Studio is for the basic changes, not for the complex part. So are we good now? Francis, you're good with this?
Yes, I'm good with this.
Okay. So we have covered two things. The validation rule, which can be called from the flow action, and you have to pass some condition expressions and you can use existing functions. Second is the required condition. Either you can do it from the, you can say the view, or you can do it from the property itself directly in the section. And there is one more place from where you can configure same thing, which is the validate rule. So if I show you, let's take example of this validate rule. Okay, I'll enable this condition. If you see at the top, we have one option as dot insurance type as required and enable condition. So condition is enabled. So that's why we are checking on submit, but we can make it required also. But then it is not a server side. I mean, it's not a client side, it will be server side because you have to submit, then only flow action will be triggered. So it's like you can mark required as a client side and you can mark required as a server side as per your own requirement. If you want to directly show it onto the UI without any user interaction, you can directly configure in the view or in the section rule. If you want to call everything at once on the submit, you can call it in the validate rule. Okay. Now let's talk about the edit validate rule. Edit validate rule are the piece of Java codes which can be applied on a property. So let's say I'll go to this one. Okay, this is the section which won't open. Okay. Then we have to try the insurance details. Or I will do it from, so let's say personal detail, we have these things: first name, last name, phone number, date of birth, product model, age, email. Let's open this property. Okay, again to open we have multiple ways, so I'll open from here. We'll go to insurance, data model, and property, and first name. Let's see where first name is. First name is there. If you go to this advanced tab, you will find one method, use validate. So this is nothing but a edit validate rule configuration. I can click down key here, and these are the existing Java applications, or you can say Java source code, which I can use for the edit validate rule. For example, if I search for is blank, that means I can directly add this expression on this property. I don't have to make it required or have to set any checkbox, nothing. Just select this out of the box function is blank. If I open this thing, if you see, this is a Java code. Boolean is valid, the value, that means the value which will be entered in that particular property. So the length of the value is greater than 0 is valid. If not is valid, then set the message on the property that it cannot be blank. So if you want, you can write your own Java code and we can put it directly on these properties in the advanced tab. We have one more property as uppercase. Let's say, see, we have one for US zip codes. Regex function is there, compile is US zip, return true. If length is not equal to 5, then false. Even for 10 numbers, we have, I think, Pega provides us. We have for 10. So most of the requirement Pega covers with the OTB rules only. But if sometimes feel like nothing is there that will match a requirement, you can create a own rule. Is future date also you can check here. That means we can use same thing sometime in the client side, sometime in the server side. It's just the requirement that we have to identify which will suits more to the user. If showing in the UI makes more sense, then go for that. If submitting the screen and showing everything at once, then we can go for the submit of the flow action. Now let's see how this will work. So I'll give this one first name. So first name, I'll make it as, first I need to make it non-mandatory from the view. Personal detail, optional, and optional. Save. Now let's verify once. I'll create one case. Okay, not from here. Okay, now it is not mandatory. I can try to submit. Yeah, I'm able to. Now let's go to the first name property is blank. Save. Let's create one case. Now, you. Let's remove this one and try to submit. Oh, is it not saved? Save first name. It's blank. When the length is greater than 0, then valid. You get this is fine. Create insurance. Let's see clipboard ones. First name is Harsha, so I need to remove this. I'll save once. Open. Okay. Let me remove the defaulting here. I don't want to default the data now. So I'm removing these three things. Let's create once again. Okay. Let's see if it is still not throwing error. Then there is some issue with this section itself, I guess. Then we can check insurance detail. But the main objective is like we have to add that validation on the property itself. For example, insurance type. So we can open the property directly from here. And from the advanced tab, we can add the different validate conditions. So it will directly check for that. Then let's try for description. I'll remove this condition. Never. Submit. Icon is gone. Let's open the property. Let's see if this will work here. Is blank. Let's refresh once. So it is still blank. I'll submit. Okay, it is still working. Okay, I need to check this thing then. There is some issue. It is not picking up these validate rules. But the primary implementation is we have to open the property rule and then we have to give the validate. If you want to give your own rule, suppose you want to give something like test, you can click on this. It will open the same configuration and you can own your own Java source. Okay.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yes. You're able to get it right. Now,
Yeah, I do.
if required, is it possible if you can create it with yourself? I mean, couple of like validate rules. You're comfortable?
Yes, I think I can.
Good. Because now what we are going to do is tomorrow we are going to start one more application that will be more in detail, which have proper stages. Because right now, if you see, we are just randomly adding fields because we have to cover certain topic. So to test it, we are adding as per the requirement. That means suddenly we are adding some validations, even though those are not required. But tomorrow we will start something. It's a dummy application, even which Pega provides. So we will create the same application and it will be very detailed. And once the course will be end, it is a full-fledged application with proper stages, proper process, proper steps. And even we will try to send some email also, the proper email, we will try to send it so that we will use. Because now the validation is kind of done. Constraint rule, I already covered in last session. This one, constraint. So when require that, else add message. So this is the same when rule. When particular condition is true, if that condition is required, then add your message. It is the same thing. Suppose in the insurance type, let's go to section once. This insurance type, suppose I'll make it as radio button. Let's see how it will come. Okay, so you can see it will come like this now, because it will, if you want to allow multi-select also, that option is there in the Pega itself. Let's see the control ones. What option you have in the radio button? If we want to control, okay, just a one question, okay? Now you tell me, these values, auto insurance, health insurance, home insurance, these are coming, right? These are for the insurance type field. But do you have any idea from where they are coming?
Those details. I know
Yes.
they're in the database and then the clipboard, but I'm not sure exactly
Okay.
what you mean by that question.
So basically, I mean is, suppose if I remove this insurance type, right? If I select anything else, select address.
Uh,
Okay.
okay, no, then you're gonna be getting things from address class.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah.
So if I select insurance type, then I can see these things: auto insurance, health insurance, home insurance. So these are coming from the property. So if I open this property here, if you come down, you will see table type, prompt list, and these are the values. So this is the place exactly from where those things are coming. So if I delete, let's say I delete these three things. One, why can't I delete? Is it the kind of glitch? Okay. I have only two things now. Close this one, close, make some space, discard, submit. You see, now we have only two values. So whatever the data you will see, it will come in the screen through some source. Either it would be a property, it could be a database, it could be external table, it could be anything. It could be even an integration also. Spot is yes. 1 second. Yep. I think we covered everything. So any doubt?
No?
Cool. And I hope you're comfortable now that if required, you can add some validations from your side.
Yes, I think I can.
Cool. And have you started any application at your end for testing?
I've just been playing around, but if I can get a better use case, something that's not super complex,
I can,
that
I
will
can,
kind of,
I can
yeah,
tell
that will
you, I
kind
can
of,
tell you one thing. You can share your screen. I'll guide you one thing. I'll guide you one place that will be your, you can say heaven for you. Is it possible if you
okay.
can share your screen?
Let me see if I have Pega running. Probably take me a
No, no,
minute.
the
One
Pega is
minute.
not required. Just a web browser is required. I'll tell you, there is a place in a Pega website that gives
Okay.
us a scenario.
All right.
You try to log
Okay.
in.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'll share my screen now then.
Now come down. No, no, in the first one, go to the first one. The first mission is there. Low
Okay.
code app
This one
builder.
here.
Yes. Can you open this
Oh,
one?
okay.
Now come down. There you will find a orange one. Yes. Design a case lifecycle. Click on this
Okay.
one. So basically, in this course, Pega provides you a perfect use case. Wherever you see this orange tile, right? That is the implementation. That is the practical one. Now you come down to scenario. Now you see how the scenario is written. It is like a actual business requirement. Little up, little
Okay.
up, little up, please. Now you see the scenario is the mayor of my town wants to increase resident engagement and improve the town's responsiveness to issue raised by the residents. So to achieve this goal, the service coordinator wants residents to submit the service request that available city service can resolve. To begin the process, the mayor and the service coordinator have outlined a workflow, right? So this is the actual business requirement, like the normal in the day-to-day life we deal with. If you come down, so it is asking, it is giving you a proper role, author name, username and password. If you want, you can use the cloud instance here, or you can build it in your own personal edition. Come more down. Now it will show you a hands-on. If you see, this is a video, this is a 4-minute 12-second video where they will create it and show you how to create this particular use case. But if you
Oh.
want little help, then you can go for detailed task. If you see detailed task, what they're doing first is hide item from case lifecycle. So first they are going in the Pega instance, enter credentials, login, then go to case type, then go to service request, then under case lifecycle, click view steps. So each and every step is there,
Hmm.
right? So you can follow this thing. See, because we opened only one orange tile, right? That means only one scenario, which is the designing a case lifecycle. If you go back, can you go back? Now come to the second below. One more challenge is there. Creating a data model. You see that challenge? Yes, open this one. This is the second part. Now here the scenario is when creating an application, consider the data model. So everything is there, right? Proper business context is mentioned. If you see in the challenge walkthrough, there will be a detailed task. There it is. They'll tell you what you
Oh.
have to create, exactly where to create, where to click. So you can replicate it, simple replication. See, Pega is all about how frequent and how more you will develop. Because the more you will develop, the more you will be comfortable with the rules, with the terms. So if you go back into that CSA system architect course, there are around more than 20 or 30 challenges. So once you complete those challenges again and again, that means your hands-on will be better and better. Adding fields to the views, creating data relationship in views. So these are the challenges that you can do.
Wow.
It is a proper use case. And you can't stuck anywhere, right? Because they are giving you solution at the same time, right?
Wow. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And in between, if you need any help, then in the start of the session, what if suppose you tried 10 things today, okay, and you got one or two doubts, then we can discuss
Yeah.
those in the next session tomorrow.
Okay.